Hey,
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I am Wendy Watson. This is To Be Revealed Live, and we have Lori Darley with us today. The mission for this show is to show our audience and to show the world that there is an infinite number of ways to be able to define what spirituality means for you. There's more than one way. It's such a personal relationship that it's really individualistic to yourself. Right. But it takes a lot of courage for our guests to be on this show, to tell their story, to talk about their own spirituality. And so I really ask you to listen with an open heart and an open mind and appreciate the story and the vulnerability that our guests are that are demonstrating on our shows. So let me just introduce Lori Darley for just a moment, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
sure. Hi. So good to be with you, Wendy. I'm very excited to be here. I am, let's see, I'm a dancer. I dance with life. I was a dancer growing up, and now I am an executive coach. I've taken the wisdom that I've learned from years of practice and performance to supporting business leaders, especially business leaders who have a purpose larger than themselves, to positively impact the world. And I support them in all kinds of ways, in shifting mindsets, in designing communication conversations that create the results that they want to see in their personal life and in their businesses. And I do that in a number of ways. I am also a somatic coach, and so I rely on the wisdom of the body to help me temper the thoughts and the stories in my head and to help me stay present and grounded. And so there's a mindfulness aspect to the work that I do. It can very much support the facilitation of kind of that experience of being a victim of life versus being a creator in life.
Yes, which is something we were just briefly talking about right before we hit record,
Yes.
which I love. So, my one main question that I ask every guest is, what does spirituality mean to you? How do you define that for yourself?
Well, it's so funny. I'm hearing my father's voice in my head for some strange reason, but I think that he had actually a pretty great definition. He used the word God, but I think it applies very well for this. And it's the things that we can't see and often don't understand, right? So there is, from my perspective, spirituality is um, very much an expression of love and a sense of connectedness and interconnectedness of all life. And so, um, yeah, like spirituality can be accessed through music, through movement, through chanting, through praying, through just listening. And so that intuitive sense that that intuitive hit that we often experience as sort of divine inspiration. That's my idea of spirituality.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
So, let's get started on your journey. So, what was your upbringing like? Was there any kind of ideology or theology involved in your upbringing? What did that look like?
Very little, very little. My parents were highly educated. My father grew up in Episcopalian. My mother grew up, I don't know what, but we went to the Dutch Reformed church in Schenectady, New York, for a very short period of time. And I think it was just so depressing to me. It was just so boring and just like so, just listening to a lot of words that didn't really resonate with me. I mean, I I certainly grew up Christian. I believed in, um, you know, at the time, I believed the myth of, of the Christmas story and Easter story. And, it was all about presents and, following the jelly bean trails. So, but it wasn't really, we didn't get into the depths of the Christian story at all. And my mother, I'll never forget seeing the book Siddhartha sitting on her, she wrote every day in her journal. And and so she was a free thinker and she was a feminist. I will say that. She felt very bound by the expectations of motherhood and housewifery. And so our spirituality, what it stopped, I mean, in terms of a regular ritual, we would have Sunday dinners at my grandmother's house, but then we stopped going to church and we would still go to those brunches or whatever. But my upbringing was probably mostly impacted by the pre-professional dance company that I, was a part of when I was a young teen and into my, all the way through my graduation from high school. And that was when I ran across it's sort of a Abraham Hicks source or story, background story, but the Seth material, which was channeled through Jane Roberts, who lived in Elmira, New York. And Seth was a personality that spoke through her. And so
Okay.
Seth and her wrote the Seth material, Seth Speaks, which gave me a fuller understanding of how organized religion came to be as a cultural outgrowth and need to control people. Right. And then I read The Nature of Personal Reality, which was kind of a primer in quantum physics, which was all about basically how what is in our heads creates our reality. So perception, which then led me to the holographic universe much later in life. But my mother was interested in automatic writing. She was a little bit more on the kind of weird occult side, I'll say. But when you really look into what the occult is actually, and the feminine divine mysteries that were expressed, and then many of us burnt at the stake for the gifts that we brought. I was hung in a previous life, apparently. So I've done some past life regression and all the other kinds of things that are associated with that. But yeah, so it was kind of the Wild West of spirituality in our family.
It sounds like it. Do you feel like that gave you the opportunity to explore
I've
versus,
always explored,
yeah,
Wendy. I've always
yeah.
been curious. I remember going to the Buddhist temple when I was in college. I was in the residential college of philosophy and religion at Northwestern University. We would be visited by the Hare Krishnas and doing cooking classes. And I remember trying to cook some vegetarian dish in my very small dorm room. But yeah, I've always explored and including recently, just wanting to have a very direct experience of
Mhm.
unity consciousness.
Yes. So what that brings up, I love that term. What is unity consciousness?
Well, I think that as human beings, our intellectual capacity, which is extraordinary, and it's like all of the evolutions of our brain are still contained in our skulls.
Mhm.
And so we have, because of our prefrontal cortex, we experience separation in our world. Like there's
Mhm.
a subject and an object,
Okay.
and it has enabled us to do amazing things,
Mhm.
right? But we often have this experience of ego that look at what I did and how I'm different from you.
Mhm.
And so unity consciousness, I think, is what animals experience. They're just a part of life. We don't, you know, I think it's Thoreau said, life is but a canvas, a blank canvas for us to write on. He had it backwards. We don't, well, who's the kind of, I always forget his name. He was a kind of a psychedelic journeyer. He said, we do not come into life, we come out of life.
Yes.
As the leaves leave, as the ocean waves, and the universe peoples, we are all a distinct and unique expression of the totality of the universe. That to me encapsulated it, all of
Yes.
it, all of
Yes.
that.
I love that. So you mentioned dance. How does dance play a role in your spirituality, and how did that get started for you?
Well, much later in my dance career, when I was teaching a lot, I read this article in Dance Magazine, I think it was, where some scientist had identified a strand of DNA that was common among all professional dancers. And it was something along the lines of, and you'll have to just, check this out on your own, but it seemed to make sense to me, and that is that that strand of DNA had this compelling need to express spirituality through music. And that just hit the nail right on the head for me. It was like, oh, yeah, because if you really think about it, music and life itself is vibration. And harmonics is different than music, but
Okay.
still very much a part of um, our life experience. We are vibration, everything around us is vibration. And so when I hear music, it fills me. It fills
Mm.
me up. Because I'm an expressive,
Mhm.
I need to express that.
Yes.
And it was also a source of dance for me, was a source of being able to explore different personas, different
Okay.
characters, different energies. Like I
Mhm.
became an energy master in some ways, being able to direct my energy in a way to connect more fully with others
Wow.
or to express something that was very human.
And you learn that through dance, through dancing different genres, or was it more different frequency of music? Because I know there's like a 900 megahertz, 800, 400, right? So you have these different frequencies of music. So is it more of the frequency, or is it more of the genre for you? Or what does that look like?
Oh, it's so many things. So I started I was classically trained. So that was very
Okay.
regimented and it
Mhm.
was very it was very challenging, right? But the music was often, Chopin or Beethoven or Bach or, those kinds of harmonics.
Mhm.
And then when, the 60s, were well on their way and we have rock and roll music. Um, it was, with Simon and Garfunkel, I remember dancing to the sounds of silence and just feeling like this tremendous communion with silence. And yet there I was listening to music and dancing along at the same time. And I was, I was just being improvisational. So anyway,
Yes, but I love that paradox of being in communion with silence while listening to music.
yeah. Yeah. So it's like the silence between the notes,
Hmm.
silence between words can have profound impact. when we have, especially when we have an intention to carry our words.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went through this explorative journey while living at home. What happened out once you moved out of the house? How did it expand from there?
Well, it was a lot of, I remember reading Be Here Now by Ram Dass, who I actually met much later.
Mhm.
And he was sort of the spiritual leader of the social venture network that my husband and I were a part of for many, many years. And he was the spiritual leader that would often lead many sort of meditation experiences. Um, gosh, there were so many things that happened. Let me see. I'm trying to think. Oh, well, later, it was sort of like through a piece that I choreographed. It was called Winter Revels.
Mhm.
And in the Northeast, they have the Christmas Revels, and it's something that has very uh, um, I'll say it is just evolved as an expression of the pagan and the sort of Judaic Christian um, celebrations, right? Santa Claus
Yeah.
actually came from a pagan ritual that happened in the winter, and the celebration of the return of the light,
Mhm.
right? And so I was kind of gobsmacked, watching and learning more about the history of Christianity and the history of Judaism and what was before that. You remember the book, The Red Tent?
I have not read that yet. I want
Yeah,
to.
so it was, when women were, isolated and
Mhm.
on their menses.
Mhm.
And but there was the goddess energy, right, that came before, which was I did a goddess workshop at I think at the Unity Church or something, and it was these horse riding dominating cultures that came down the Russian steppes and annihilated all of the matriarchal societies in the Mediterranean region and eradicated the feminine from all mention of what was becoming the Christian religion.
Mhm. Okay, that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean it's real. I mean, the Council of Nicaea
Yeah.
was also a great source of a lot of that feminine wisdom and what actually really happened with Mary Magdalene
Sure.
and all the stories that have been um, shelved, I'll say.
Okay.
And there's a
So,
version of that in Judaism as well, known as the Kabbalah.
yes, I'm actually studying that right now.
Oh,
It's
cool.
lovely. Yes. So, how does that, how does your spirituality play a role in your business and your personal life, your romantic life?
Well, my husband and I meditate together, so
Okay.
that and which also included when Wayne Dyer came out with his manifestation meditation, we would chant together
Oh,
and crack up when we were out of harmony, or it was just one of those things that um, just kind of got under our skin, tickled us
yeah.
pink.
Yes. I
But
love
in
that.
terms of um, our romantic life, I think our spirituality is coming more into the foreground as we age.
Okay.
I think that there are spaces and experiences that one can have to move beyond the physical,
Mhm.
and to have a glimpse of what lies beyond. I haven't done a lot of that, but I see that in my future. Um,
Okay. Do you feel like
and
that's a seasonal thing? As we as humans season into the older ages, that that part of our spiritual journey starts coming more in front because we're getting
we're getting
closer.
older and our
Yeah.
bodies are starting to, decay, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean that, yeah.
And but it is a beautiful connection to an I'll say an evolving sense of wisdom,
Okay.
right? And
Hmm.
there's, if you've read the book Strength to Strength, which is a kind of a business book, but it basically says that, from the time you're 30 on, you're in a descent. And so what you were really great at shifts. And he has two terms between sort of like that smart intellectual prowess that, the really can remember a whole lot of things,
Yeah.
and, not so much now,
Yeah,
right?
not so much now.
Right. But there's also something else that's coming through that hasn't come through in quite the same way.
Sure.
So I'm trusting my wisdom more,
Yes.
and how that impacts me in coaching. It's a different quality of listening that it has me reach down into sort of the well, not of my knowing, but of my curiosity.
Love that. I love that. Drawing from the well of curiosity versus drawing from the well of knowledge.
Knowledge as a fixed commodity. I think
Sure.
sometimes knowledge can also be collapsed and a part of wisdom,
Hmm.
right? We
Yes.
gain knowledge, but we don't necessarily experience the wisdom of what we think we know until we actually um, become open to the fact that what we know is the booby prize. It's great,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I love it that I can rattle off all these, books and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily support people in coming alive into their own authentic selves. And
Well,
I'm,
and by drawing off the well of curiosity, you add to your well of knowledge.
mhm.
Right. So one leads to the other, and maybe your knowledge can inspire curiosity. And
Yeah,
I think that they can play off of each other for
well
sure.
done. Well said. Yeah. I think knowledge and curiosity is kind of a polarity,
Hmm.
right? And,
Yep.
and we journey through them. But they both serve.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. But I love that you lead from the curiosity,
Mm.
right? Because I don't think curiosity killed the cat.
If it did, the cat was
I mean, it had
deserved
nine.
it.
If a cat has 9 lives, that's a lot of curiosity in order to take it down. Um, I just think curiosity just leads to everything, right? Keeping that open mind as far as learning new perspectives, learning about all the ideologies. And I think that helps people be able to figure out what works for them
Mhm.
aside from what they've been taught,
Yeah.
and to really take ownership of what they feel, regardless of the traditions or the habits and everything else that they've been taught.
Yes.
So, what are some of the practices that you use to help keep your mind open and flowing and keeping that well of curiosity full and accessible?
Yeah, beautiful. I think one of the practices that is a must, especially in my role, and that is make nothing wrong. Like, you know,
Yeah.
make nothing wrong. It's
Yeah.
all an expression of our culture, etc. And we don't have to necessarily understand exactly why somebody believes what they believe. What we are called to do is to extend compassion for the conditioning in which they're in the condition in which they're operating and attempting to be successful and fulfilled in life.
Hmm.
Right. So when I get on a call, Jesus is my friend.
Yes.
But, you know, if I'm speaking with a Christian, Muhammad is a teacher, Buddha is a practitioner, right? So all of the prophets have served us at some point in our own evolution, but then we just get stuck, you know, we just think that we have to be, you know, that we have the rightest version of all. And so the practices that I have are whatever your belief system is, um, if it's the source of your guilt and shame, then I would encourage people to do additional work on themselves so that they can pry the talons of that making wrongness, that judgment, out of their own habitual patterns so that they can see the glory, the wisdom, the unity in all of it.
Yes. Yes. So you mentioned that you use meditation.
Mhm.
Do you also use self-taught? Do you use music with your meditation since you're such a music fan? Or do you do a quiet meditation?
Yes to all of it. And I, you know, I also have not mentioned this yet, but it's interesting. At the very before I hung up my shingle as a coach, I discovered Gabrielle Roth, who wrote um, Maps to Ecstasy and Sweat Your Prayers. And she called herself an urban shaman,
Mhm.
and she created a energetic map of rhythm that follows flowing, the feminine, staccato, masculine,
Mhm.
the chaos, which is the orgasmic collision of masculine and feminine energies, lyrical, the incredible post-orgasmic lightness of being, and
Mhm.
stillness. And I used to DJ
I
and
love it.
and conduct. I'd never became certified in
Mhm.
the five rhythms, but I have worked with Gabrielle, I've worked with her son, etc. And many people are calling it ecstatic dance now, but I did that for years. And I would remember iTunes when you could actually create your own playlist?
Yes.
I love to do that. I love to
Okay.
create those rhythmic journeys because when you are able to let the dance dance you,
Hmm.
that's when unity consciousness shows up.
Yeah.
That's when healing occurs. That's when the patterns that live in our body are intentionally disrupted.
Yeah.
And so that has been and continues to be a powerful practice. My husband and I dance
Wonderful.
together almost every
Yeah.
weekend. Yeah.
Yes. That's lovely. There's not, to me personally, there's nothing sexier than two people that can dance together and really be in rhythm and allow the man to lead and allow the
Actually, we don't do that kind of dancing.
okay. What kind of dancing do you do?
We're you know, we'll do seventh grade slow dancing.
Oh,
My
okay. Hey,
husband,
whatever works for you.
yeah, my husband is I love to do partner dance as a
Uh-huh.
professional dancer,
Sure.
and my husband doesn't.
Okay.
And that's okay. And
Yeah.
so we do free expressive dancing.
Okay. But you're still, but you're
He never learned how to do a step ball change.
right. Which is one of the simplest things to do.
Yeah.
but you're still in flow, you're still being expressive based off the feeling of the other person's energy, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what's lovely about it. That's what's lovely.
Thank you.
Do you have like a self-care routine that you do or that you've set up for yourself in order to either get your day going or to set yourself up for the right intentions and the right energy and the right frequency for the day?
I do a lot of different kinds of things. Um, I journal every day, every day.
Mhm.
I'd been journaling before the artist way came along. In the morning pages. I've always been a journaler. I have through my somatic training, I have experienced various ways of working with my breath, right, to calm me down. It's not necessarily something that I do um, all the time, but like before I go to sleep, I'll, breathe in and then take three really rapid deepening breaths through my nose. So breathe in, and that's at the top of it, and then extend the exhale for about, if I breathe in for 5 and then through my nose, that opens up the capillaries in your lungs. And then
Mhm.
when you extend the exhale well past what seems like that you need, it
Mhm.
has an incredibly calming effect. And it also helps me go to sleep if I'm, ruminating. And I also, um, I use my voice. Like sometimes I'm in the car and I just wail or
Yes.
moan
Yes.
or moan, "Ugh," that makes me laugh. I'm a fan of laughter yoga.
Laughter yoga.
Have you heard of it?
That's a first. I have not heard of laughter
Oh my
yoga.
God. If you ever have a chance to go to a laughter workshop, you've got to do it. It starts with
Yeah.
ha ha ho ho ho, ha ha ho ho ho. And it's fake. But then what you find, much like grieving,
Uh-huh.
we're afraid to feel the wave of the emotion. But when we wail, when we keen, I come
Yeah.
back, I have Irish roots. When we keen, I've experienced group grieving, like we're literally the whole room, 200 people are wailing, gradually together, and it builds on itself. And what we think as rational human beings is that I'll go down that pit and never be able to come out. But that's not what happens. What happens
Mhm.
is you feel it, you experience it, you lean into it, and it crests and it descends on its own.
Yep. Sure
Much
does.
like laughter,
Yeah.
you can't laugh all the time. You may want to try, but
The
I
comedians help us try to do that, don't they?
yeah, yeah.
But
That-
it's nice to, yeah, I've never heard of that, but I think it's great because I think, we get stuck in the mundane sometimes. And it's just, we need that outside source or just that push to be able to get past that and just get back into that childish, funny, humorous, animated side of ourselves.
Yeah. And we do take ourselves terribly seriously. I mean, my
Especially as Americans,
really,
I
it's
think.
just kind of like get over ourselves. Come on, get over
We're
your own sacred self. Come on.
we're all humans. We all fall and bump our butts. We all,
Yeah.
we all end up sending the wrong text to the wrong person sometimes. Like, just
Yeah.
go
And
with it.
the important thing is clean it up.
Yeah.
We all
If
make
there's something to clean
mistakes.
up or just
Yeah.
accept it, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yes. So what has been the most impactful thing or event, book, person, aha moment for your spiritual journey?
That's hard. Um,
I love that that's hard.
yeah. I mean, people who have shaped my spirituality have been people like Marianne Williamson, Lynn Twist, who wrote The Soul of Money and Living a Committed Life, who also endorsed my book. Um,
Oh.
so she's a powerhouse. She's raised hundreds of millions of dollars, probably billions for the World Hunger Project and for the rainforest, the Pachamama Alliance.
Hmm.
Um, I think in the seven, I can't remember, the seven faces of God or something. It was a Deepak Chopra book that it talked a lot. It was a reminder of the Seth material for me, like that, if you're familiar with spiral dynamics, there is this idea that our relationship to God evolves with the evolution of our own consciousness. And a lot of people don't like to talk about levels of consciousness because we realize that we have some growing to do.
No way.
And when you're in sort of this tribal, all survival orientation, God is often punishing.
Mhm.
But as we do our own work, God becomes more loving, but still kind of out there. And as we continue to evolve, God is everywhere.
Mhm.
So that has always stayed with me, I think.
I love that because then there's that constant renewal of wanting to evolve and
Yeah.
wanting to get closer and closer to your God, spirit, universe,
Yeah.
light, whatever that is for you,
And do
right?
our work along the way.
Into our work, into your authenticity. Um, which leads me to my next question. How has your spirituality allowed you to be in your fullest authenticity? And do you feel like you're operating out of your most authentic self?
Yes. I do. Do I come out of that? Yes. Um, and you know, I'm in a place right now I should be retired, right? And I'm scaling. Like, who does that?
Yes.
And so, um, I'm kind of like, well, if I can continue to be my authentic self on that journey, including the uncomfortable moments when I have to deal with a new platform that makes me crazy, it's not happening to me. I
Right?
am finding, ways that can help me simplify. I often think of AI as our modern version of the Akashic record.
Ah, that is so true. And I love that analogy.
It makes it a lot less evil, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like what if we have access to all knowledge? I mean, I don't know if you've been on chat recently, but it can get pretty esoteric and poetic.
Yes, it can. I'm on
And
it every day.
yeah, yeah. And when you have a prompt that is juicy and spiritual and life affirming, it's amazing what shows up and what, gives you an opportunity to work with and
Yeah.
make your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, so did I answer your question?
Um, you did. You answered the first part of it. Yeah, you did. You answered
Ask
my
me
question.
again. Ask me again. Let me see. Do
I
you
couldn't
remember?
remember what the question was.
All right.
I know the part that you answered was, do you feel like you're operating in your authenticity? And you said yes. That was a very clear answer. How does your spirituality help you to be in your to operate in your authenticity or to get you in touch with it?
Um, I think primarily for me, when I am feeling warmth in my heart, when I'm feeling that connection, when I am become aware of the chills going down my back when something presents itself to me, oftentimes it's a reminder to lighten up. It's a
Mhm.
reminder to not become so self-referential or self-oriented. Um, uh, it gives me courage to reach out and pause my own judgments because my own judgments are often what keep me out of myself rather than into my, into the incredible gifts that I've been given.
I love that. You guys need to replay that last 30 seconds because that's amazing. That is amazing material. And it's so true because our brains, our earthly physical brains have a tendency to get in the way. And so being able to take that pregnant pause or, just stop yourself from reacting and really get back in tune and ask yourself, how do I feel about this? It's just so incredibly important than probably any other tip that we can give people out there these days, right? Uh, One of the things that I am demonstrating with people is getting back into the eight senses. And you mentioned a few of those with the chills up your spine and how do, what's that?
Warmth in the heart.
And the warmth in the
Sure.
heart, right? How do you use those senses to either communicate with yourself in discernment, to understand what communication is being relayed to you? How do you use your senses?
Well, first is to recognize that I have them. And in the somatic container, one of the things that gave me a lot of freedom, especially in my work as a coach, was to, especially in relationship to how we experience our emotional body. And we have, I think, been over psychologicalized um, to what when we experience emotion, it starts as a sensation in the body.
Mhm.
And then there's a story that we make up about it,
Yep.
right? And so what it helps me to do is to unlock, wow, I'm feeling a real grip in my, solar plexus area, in my stomach area. What am I resisting? Right? And so it makes me the sensations, what I think I hear versus what is actually heard or what is actually being sounded, is limited by my own past and experience and habit. And so I always ask myself, what else could it mean? What else is there for me here? How can this be a gift for me or others? What if that was, Byron Katie's work? What if it wasn't true?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember the very beginning of the coaching industry started with Thomas Leonard, and he wrote the 28 principles of the attraction model or whatever. And I remember hearing him speak, and he said, I'm done with beliefs. I'm done with beliefs. I was like, whoa, that sounds like a belief. The beliefs don't serve you, right? You can't get
Yeah.
away from a
Yeah.
belief, but you can be aware that you have them. And it's always a good question. It's always a good exercise
Yes.
to ask yourself if that belief is true. What is the belief that has the world be structured in a way that I am now reacting to it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or, I have a button and somebody keeps pushing the same button. Well, my job is to heal the frickin' button.
And to protect the button from being pushed in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Heal, protect.
Enemy, yeah.
Yep. I love it. Is there any adversity that you've had to overcome in your spiritual journey?
Oh, well, my own self-criticism. That's probably the biggest challenge of my life.
Yes. I mean, that's the biggest adversity that we all have, I think, sometimes.
I have, my mother's death from cancer. The belief that I had around that was that she chose out of a marriage that she didn't feel like she could leave.
Okay.
And there was a moment in her passing that and I write about this in my book, was she was in kind of the in-between space.
Mhm.
And you hear all these stories about people going towards the light, right? Well,
Yeah.
she
Going
she
back.
was not happy. She didn't recognize who the people were that were coming for her, and she was
Okay.
she was petrified.
Yeah.
And then she went into a deeper coma and eventually passed peacefully,
Mm.
I think. But it was kind of a wake-up call, right? Like that she had her own journey that she had to move through. And um, it kind of sobered me up a little bit, right? About all the
Okay.
kind of the new agey, just think about, this and that, and all will be well. It's like, not necessarily. There can be some real trauma in terms of people's lives. I was not molested. I was not, I was probably Me Too'd a lot in the 70s and 80s, to tell you the truth.
Mhm.
I have had thoughts if I had ever been drugged,
Okay.
but it was also the time, and the
Mhm.
time was a different one.
Yeah.
But it definitely was a journey of healing my body and my own expression of my body as a woman.
Hmm.
Has been it's not been a walk in the park.
Okay.
So, but a lot of it was, you know, in my world, everything's my fault.
Oh, okay.
Obviously not true.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can laugh about it now,
Yeah.
but that's where I had, shame and guilt was big in my family, but it was dealt very silently.
Okay. So how did you get yourself through? Like, can you talk about that journey a little bit of getting yourself through everything's my fault and the guilt and stuff in order to get to where you are now?
Oh, so much. I think there's just been I mean, I've done a lot of body work. I've visited shamans.
Hmm.
I have journeyed on psilocybin and um, MDMA. I've even done ayahuasca. So I don't know if this is something that you want to actually, put out there, but that's what I've been doing.
Yeah,
And
it's your journey. So yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I know
yeah.
people that have done it, and there's a TV show, Expedition Unknown with Josh Gates. He actually recorded and did a whole episode on his ayahuasca treatment. So, I mean, I'm not promoting
Advocate.
it or
No,
uh,
this
or
is
discouraging people from it.
right.
This is your platform to talk about your journey. So,
Stealing
by all
Fire was
means.
a really good book for me to read, just in terms of sort of the tradition of sacred medicines and how the ruling class has always strictly controlled them.
Mhm.
Because when they've been released into the greater population, or for, First Nations people around the world who do all kinds of things, there's always an expansion of
Yeah.
awareness as a
Yeah.
function of that. And it's not for everyone, and you have to be called to it.
You have to be called to it, and you really need to do your due diligence. This is my public service and my PSA. Do your due diligence if you are going to do any kind of psychedelic or any kind of medication. Please do your due diligence in making sure that you find the right practitioner, a good practitioner that has ethics and values and is going to be there to support you during that journey, because
Yeah.
it can get pretty
Not for fun.
serious. It's
It's
not
not
fun.
for fun.
Yeah.
There are elements of it that are um, could be entertaining, but that's not the purpose of
And
them.
watch the episode, the Expedition Unknown episode with Josh Gates, to kind of get some sort of an idea of what that looks like, because he shows periods of his purging and part of the ceremony, and he talks about a lot of the physical things that he had to deal with um, because
Yeah,
of the
it's
tea.
traumatic,
It is traumatic. So that's my
dramatic
little
and
PS.
traumatic.
That's my little PSA for that. Um, so what would you say to others that have that self-critic, everything's my fault, that inner guilt? What would you say to them that could help them maybe manage or overcome that type of adversity?
Yeah. Um, Recognizing and becoming more aware of how prevalent it is. So, like, make note of it. It's like, even in meditation, when you note a thought, you note it so that you can understand that it is been given to you when you didn't have the language to defend yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's passed down through your family, your education, all of the influencing. And so you got to look at, all right, when I know in my body, it's like, I know when that conversation is going on in my head. There's a reason why we do this when we say somebody's crazy, right? Because they keep repeating the same thing over and over again in their head and relating to it as if it is them. So I say that whenever I'm in that mode, I'm not me. It's not me speaking. When the voice comes and it's a single bell, that, intuitive voice, and it doesn't repeat itself, that's what I want to listen to, right? That
Mm-hmm.
there's something, and also shifting just literally shifting your way of comporting, the way that you arrange your body in the chair, right? Are you here, or are you feeling your dignity?
Mm-hmm.
Sitting up straight is actually a great practice in accessing our power.
Yes, because then we force our
Right.
alignment, our nervous system, our communication device. We're setting it all up straight in alignment.
Yes.
Therefore,
Yes.
the energy can flow straighter and cleaner. when it
Yeah.
has all these zigzags and stuff and curves and stuff that it has to deal with, it doesn't flow as easily.
I'll tell you something really weird. I think
Okay.
I may have shared this with you. But I have an avatar,
Okay.
and she is 10 foot tall. She has long red hair. She wears a green muslin dress,
Mhm.
and she has a leather strap and a leather belt and a kick-ass sword. And her name is Lore.
I
And
love
I
it.
step into her
Yeah.
when I need to access my ancestral power.
I love that.
And
Yes.
I've actually worked with clients here at the house. I have this amazing thing that I got from a estate sale, and it's a Neiman Marcus full length red velvet opera cape.
Oh
To,
my gosh.
and I have people walk around it. I've also called it your dinosaur tail, like that we don't have a sense of where we've come from, which is the back half of our body, and feeling that that majesty,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
also the ancient evolution of our human beings,
Yep.
right? and
Mhm.
and so it's fun to walk around the house with a dinosaur tail.
Very true. I mean, it's like you're 8 years old again and you're running around with the
Well,
red
it slows you
cape or
down.
the,
It
yeah.
slows you down, and it has you be much more deliberate in terms of, well, I've got to make room for this thing and come around the corner.
I mean, it's very indicative of some of the baggage that we hold,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And how we have to navigate certain things with maybe a wider corner
Yeah,
because we're trailing all of this stuff with us.
yeah, yeah.
I love it.
The good, the bad, and the
So
ugly.
to wrap up, what is one last thing that you want to leave people with? One last thought in terms of spirituality, spiritual growth, something that you've learned and experienced. Is there any last thing that you want to leave people with?
Um, love yourself as the divine being that you are.
I love that because we're all made from the same source. We're all made from divine light and leading with that, with not just with ourselves, which is the most important part, but also, as you mentioned earlier, leading with that with other people.
Mhm.
And what else could this mean? How can it be beneficial to me? How can I use this um, for me and not to me, right? All of the juicy tidbits that you gave
Yeah.
us earlier.
It's like living the namaste, living that, I see the God in me sees the God in you, right?
Yep.
Is live the namaste.
I
It's
love
more than
that.
the end of a yoga class.
It's a life mantra,
It is.
really. Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
story and being
Thank
on
you.
here. I do recognize that it takes a lot of vulnerability and courage to share your stories and especially in regards to spirituality and all the things. So I really appreciate it.
Well,
Um,
you're welcome.
Thank you. And for those listening, please comment below. Share with us what you think about Lori's story today and what was inspiring for you and maybe some tidbits that really helped you to get on your journey. And share, like, follow us on YouTube, and we'll see you in a few weeks.